We have two great presentations today. So I'll bring this meeting to order. This is the Metropolitan Council Committee of the Whole, this October 16th. And I think the agenda, as I mentioned, are two information items. We're going to be hearing about the recommendation and kind of an update on the mentioned 2015 land acknowledgement. And then also really something we've been talking about for some time, to get a little deeper into what role and how Met Council and Met Transit has been dealing with people experiencing homelessness. And not to say that this is an end all, but I think it's important that we kind of set aside this time. I'm sorry we're missing a few people, including some of the presenters, but before we do that, and don't worry, we're have plenty to talk about. Unless I hear otherwise, I will assume that I will take that agenda as being approved. But we do have the minutes from our meeting, Committee of the Whole on October 2nd. So unless there's an addition or a correction, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those meetings are approved, those minutes are approved. All right, Allison is here and I know you were just telling me a couple of your co-presenters were ran into some difficulty, a car accident.
Yes, one has a car accident and one has a client, so just me tonight.
Well,
But I hope you can make too. Yeah.
You
Yes.
can do it. I just want to, I'm not apologizing, but acknowledging that I wish I had been able to be at the sunrise ceremony on Indigenous Day, and but I'm really impressed with so many council members and staff and others were there, and Robert, thank you for calling that to our attention.
Thanks Councilmember Lindstrom, Councilmember Pacheco were there, Director Canderas. Were you there?
Yeah, I was there, I got video.
Oh my goodness, how did I miss it? It was a huge
Magical
cause.
sunrise.
The biggest, I'm sure ever. It was probably over 300 people, I would say. So
And the pictures on the front page of the paper, show the right, oh, beautiful time of year.
Yeah, I appreciate you all being there. It's wonderful to see.
The only thing I would suggest is maybe next time we could have like a gathering place for us. so-
Yeah, yes,
Cause I was
we're
thinking, I would love to know who's here, but
Yes, a plan of
And next time we're
action,
gonna take a
yes.
picture.
yeah, all
Yes,
the council quotes.
I had my Crazy Horse shirt on too.
How did I miss you?
Yes.
Oh.
All right, well, Allison.
Yes,
Lord.
so, Allison Waka, I am a nominee Navajo with Transit Pakistan Inawasa. I always like to acknowledge my parents, Mariella Sosi and Lawrence Waka, and tribal liaison for Met Council as almost a year. I have one more month and then I'll be here a year. Flew by, and today I'll be presenting for the Land, Water, People Acknowledgement Statement that the Advisory Council has worked on. And so, next, do I just say next slide? Usually Angela and Jillian both have COVID.
Oh.
So.
Oh, here come the
great,
reinforcements.
thank you so much, thank you. Usually Angela's in charge of okay, all right, thank you for making
We're a one-person band.
Yeah, so a little background about the advisory council, which you all know, but we've been meeting since March and advising and holding the council accountable and taking meaningful action for the support and partner with tribes and the communities here in the region. And here to present the land, water, and people commitment. Oh, we presented the land, water, and people commitments not too long ago to you all. And next slide. So one of the recommended commitments from the advisory council addresses a public acknowledgement. And so one of the things is, as a responsible government agency, the council will lead in publicly recognizing the genocide and displacement that American Indian communities survived and continue to endure. And I believe it's on the next slide that the statement, okay. So So I'll read the short statement that the advisory council had come up with, and so I'll do my very best. This is where Robert was going to be. Robert Pilot, our advisory council member, was the one that had been practicing, so apologies if I get anything
He's
wrong.
a professional radio journalist.
Yes.
Yes.
So I have big shoes to fill here, but so the Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Oyate, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As a part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and the settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutions, include the Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Oyate, the Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Oyate, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities, representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home. And so there is a longer statement that I believe was sent to you all. But I'll just be reading the short statement. So the advisory council came up with these recommendations for use. So reading at council meetings and the meeting of the council committees, included in public-facing planning documents and adopt as a part of Imagine 2050, include in new employee onboarding orientation and all employee continuing education, adapt for the use at council buildings and facilities, including Robert Street, Haywood, and the Metro plant. The long statement would be created on a council webpage that includes the tribal relations and for the long statement. And using the long statement where recognition or moments of reflection are appropriate, and included as a part of educational resources for employees, residents, and local governments. So this is what the advisory council members came up with. And so what we wanted to do is, one of our advisory council members was, who is a previous Dakota language teacher, was going to give a short Dakota language lesson. So I think one of the conversations that we had was how we are already saying Dakota words in our everyday life here in the region. And so I was just going to read some of the place names, and some of you received this previously, but Anoka, so it means on both sides. Chanhassen, gray-white trees. Chaska is male firstborn, so the oldest. I even say this wrong, Matomai, right?
Matomai.
Thank you,
That's
I
right.
always read it, so it means Bear Lake. Mankato means blue earth. Mendota means a place where the waters run together. Minnehaha, curling waters. And so this is one of the words in the land acknowledgement. Minnesota, it means smoky water. And Minnetonka, big water. Shakopee is the name of a Dakota chief, but also the number 6. So let's see, Waconia, spring or fountain, a place where water wells out of the ground. And Wayzata, which is to the north. Winona, a female name for the firstborn child. So we were going to be giving examples that these are words that we already say and we know how to say. And I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is people are fearful of saying things wrong, right? And one of the Dakota leaders for Upper Sioux, who is, oh my goodness, I'm spacing his name right now. Kevin Jensvold, he was really, he was asked this question, as an ally, do you see a disrespectful with allies saying the words incorrectly? And he was just really, it really spoke to me. It was really beautiful because he said, no, my elders had always said, no matter the way that they're said, they're said, as long as our language is being spoken, it is in the correct way. There is no incorrect or disrespectful way that you would say these words. Everybody says words differently, and we all know what you were meaning to say when you say them. And so he basically was saying too that we want people to learn, we want people to continue to say our words and our language regardless. And so not to be fearful of saying it wrong, and the more you say it, the better that you will start saying it correctly, although he doesn't believe there's an incorrect way to say them, right? So I wanted to pass that along to you all, and when reading the long statement, and there's words that are gonna be said, like Minnesota, I think a lot of us know what that means, or how to say it now, but it means water, and so, and then also I think, I just wrote down what other words we have in the statement. So, Makoche, so it means land, and that's in the title of one of the long statement. Oyate is so people. I've also heard of it as family but means people. And then this one, Jewel would have gotten correct, but I'm gonna do my very best. But Mita Koye Oya Sin, so that's also in which means all my relations, or we're all related. And so that's in the statement as well. And so that's what we were planning on covering today with. And I also can send out, I had sent it to a few of you, but I can send out the entire PDF that I have of this one, so if that's helpful. So next steps.
I'm sorry,
Oh, yeah,
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I mean, I would love it if at some point if Jewel is available,
Yes,
or somebody,
yes.
if we can do a little segment on those.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
Where we kind of repeat them back and.
Repeat them back.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
and I'll
Chair.
pass
Thanks,
that
Allison.
along to Jewel, and
Thank
we
you.
can make it. We also had sent an invitation to Sheila. She teaches Dakota at South High. And, but today is the start of their parent-teacher conferences. And so it's just, one of those times of the season, MEA and all the good stuff. So, but we definitely can make a more permanent plan for invitations for teachers for you all. Definitely, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but I get helped a lot by the phonetic spelling.
Yes,
That would be helpful.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I
you
can.
know, if that's incorporated in a PDF that we can start
Definitely.
practicing in advance a little bit, that would be great.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely do that, thank you. So the next step are incorporating the acknowledgement statements into council work, developing a work plan for the advisory council based on areas needing further support and engagement, and working internally to integrate recommended commitments into Imagine 2050 and organizational work plans. So I think with this, it really coincides with the statement, is that we really want to see the action items going into work and action, and so this is part of the next steps that we will be seeing coming forward. Oh, okay, so I was so overwhelmed with the last minute changes, but so is there any questions? I know there was a couple questions I thought that might come up from this.
I think this is a recommendation, that language, the short version, and we would actually incorporate that, to be part of every formal meeting,
Right.
and maybe written in various places. Since it's part of the 2050 plan, we're not taking any action on this tonight. I think this is just kind of an update.
Yes.
And then as we adopt the 2050 plan, then it would go into effect, or maybe we should be thinking about incorporating this into our practice sooner? I mean, is that something that's been thought of?
Yeah, I think that's the conversation. The next steps, we're meeting with the advisory council on the 28th, which we're gonna have the work plan submitted to them. We have been having meetings about how to integrate that into the council. And we can ask what they would like to see, if they would like to bring it back to you all more and have more of the advisory councils here to answer any of those questions.
Sure.
But it's entirely up to your recommendations too and your guidance.
Sure, okay, that's something for us to consider.
Yeah.
Councilmember Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna ask a question that I asked you beforehand so that, even though I know it's gonna come. Sorry, there's right in my eyes.
Daylight savings, it'll soon be dark.
No, I should put on sunglasses right now. So I would say that I've gotten the question a couple of times today and also kind of came away from our session with the American Indian Advisory Council as well that there was more of a desire to have the commitments embedded within our work, but not a strong affinity for land acknowledgements. And so so we had a brief conversation beforehand because I know I came away with that impression from that meeting. And so I'll turn it over with Allison, where your next steps were gonna be with that to kind of get to understand.
Yeah, I would really like to have a conversation with the advisory council members because they did come up with this statement. It was under their advisement that this was even created. And I think that is why we started with the action items and the commitments coming forward, because the advisory council wanted to see those moving forward first and then the statement following. And so, but I could definitely bring that question to them, but this statement is coming directly from them. We were there supporting, but it was the council members that created that, so.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Allison and Councilmember Weber, that when you read this statement, even calling it a land acknowledgement maybe doesn't go far enough. Because when I read it, it really is a land acknowledgement and commitments.
Mhm.
In the statement, it says we commit to certain things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's a work in progress and this will be an ongoing living document. So we would want this to be contemporary and every year annually reviewed. Okay. Any other?
Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have the same question as Councilmember Barber, but even in the wording, it talks about including it in Imagine 2050, but reading it before every single council meeting and committee meeting is a whole nother thing, and I have concerns about that because not that I have any problem with, you know, our partnership with the Native American community or anything, but there is so much that goes on that other people experience injustices in the past, even in the present, and I feel like doing that at every meeting kind of singles out that this injustice matters, but maybe the other ones don't, and I feel like just having it in the 2050 plan and discussing it there is what was originally presented to us the way I understood it, but reading it before every single meeting, first of all, at some point it turns into the da, like we did, you know, like when we had the meeting of the emergency declaration kind of a thing, and that ends up sort of being disrespectful in and of itself. But just that there are so many other groups and people that are experiencing their own kinds of problems either in the past or currently, and it seems like we're singling out that this group matters and the others don't. I actually lost sleep about it, so, which I don't usually do. So I just wanted to put that out there as maybe reading it before every single meeting is maybe not the best tactic to take.
Yeah, well, okay, thanks for that thought. Yeah, Rita?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I know that the last presentation that we had, I was pleasantly surprised to hear the acknowledgement not just of Native American Indians, but African American descendants of slaves, having historical, intentional oppressive issues in the Americas, and recognizing that meant a lot to me as an African American. I also attended a couple of the MIAC meetings, the American Indian Council meetings, and heard their perspective on the land acknowledgements. And what I gathered was an expression for being genuine when we do our acknowledgements. And I think having the order of implementation would be respectful of that, meaning that we need to be intentional in our commitments before we say that, otherwise are we really being genuine? So I think the more information that we can have as a council, from the advisory council on how we should proceed, I think is going to be very important.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a theory that all the isms are connected, and when you give power to and a voice of respect to one indigenous group, you empower indigenous groups all over the world. In this country, I noticed one thing at the circle. That's one thing that they mentioned when we had the sunrise ceremony. He said, this is not only for Native American indigenous groups, this is for all indigenous groups all over the world. So, I mean, if you think about what happened in Africa, there were indigenous people that were brought here. Also, when the railroads were built, the Asians, they brought the Asian men here, didn't allow them to have wives. Later on, they put them in Chinatowns. So there's an interconnection of injustice. And if we recognize one, then we build a linkage to the others. And I think that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and to reply, I think when, it's our belief that when the Native community moves forward, all of us move forward. And to also make that there is a difference between the tribes, the tribal nations. We have treaties, we have sovereignty, which does make us different. And so to acknowledge that as a government institution, I think that is the way of us being respectful of that relationship, but then also to the point of saying it and it losing its meaning. There are examples where throughout the U.S. when there are people and institutions that have been doing land acknowledgements for quite a long time. And yes, it does take time. Year 3, you see people becoming allies, volunteering at different things. It was an example at the University, I think, of Texas, where the first year people were, staff just were outright disrespectful with the acknowledgement. And then by year 3, they were reading books, they were integrating it into their classrooms and so forth. So I think, it may take some time to develop, and that's what I think that's why we're all here to, but then also to make maybe I don't like using church as an example, but when you go into church, you say the same things over and over again, every single time, and they can mean, you can catch on to something one time and then the next time you didn't, so every time it's read, you hope that you can connect to something that's being said. And so I think the part of being invisible constantly in this region is something that is not, and to bring prosperity and success to this region, it is then creating visibility for the Native community that resides here and the tribal nations here in the state. So I think for all of us to move forward, it does have to recognize our past, and we can integrate and change up the statement that we say, and include all of us that live here. And so I think this is a conversation that we are having, and that's why we do have the advisory council, to have these conversations and start moving forward in a good way.
Councilmember Venta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Allison. And I just want to note that in addition to you coming up on your first anniversary, Michael and Elias are as well.
Yes.
And the three of you have been a great addition and have really helped a lot. And I really appreciate what you said about people being and feeling invisible. And I want to note that that's an issue for the elderly. It's an issue for the handicapped, and it's an issue for women.
Yep.
And we need to remember that as well. Race is, without question, an issue that too often divides us, but it's happening in ways that you can't imagine. And I've during the last 6 years had the benefit of hearing a lot of people tell their stories. I won't go into mine because it would take too long, but the discrimination I felt as a woman in the last 70 years is significant. And I think all of us have a variety of stories we can tell. So I hope that this doesn't become rote for people. And I hope that others feel as though their invisibility is being acknowledged and lifted up. I feel right now, especially 2 weeks and 6 days from an election, I feel that we are such a divided country that whatever we can do to pull us together is just really important. So, thank you.
Thank you. Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick things, and I think thanks, Allison, for the work and for the presentation. And we've been joined by some of the advisory council members, so maybe we can give Allison an opportunity to introduce them as well. But also, I really want to thank Council Members Wolf and Bento for lifting up this idea that a lot of people in our country experience injustice, right? And through the work of this advisory council, but more broadly, the Truth and Reconciliation sort of movement, there is, often we start with the two sort of original sins of our country, stolen land and stolen labor, right? And so this is our step into the truth-telling part of this work, and that we have to kind of start somewhere, and so this is where we're starting. And I love what you said, Councilmember Chambers, about continuing to acknowledge the other original sin, right, the stolen labor part that contributes to the quality of life that we live throughout this country. And I would note that in Canada, for example, where they had a robust federal truth and reconciliation process, one of the things that emerged is this acknowledgement that opens official proceedings and things like that. So this is something that I think we can learn from every time we say it. And just to point out again, and Allison, you said this, but just to elevate it again, Native people here are not just a race, right? We are a political subdivision of this country, and we exercise a different space because of that. And so I just wanted to kind of lift that up as well. The last thing I'll talk about here is just I really want to thank not just Allison and the advisory council, which has been amazing, but the enthusiastic reception of this work from our colleagues here on the council, but also the staff across the board, the regional administrator, the senior departmental staff, those working around this. It's been a robust amount of activity in trying to figure out how to implement this, not just within Imagine 2050, but really in our work. The acknowledgement is one piece, but what we're doing within parks and open spaces, for example, or what we're doing in our other divisions with water, especially, they're really striving to figure out how to use this work to influence everything we do, policy, operations, and things. And I really want Allison and the advisory council members who are here to hear that. It's not just sitting, it's active.
Yeah, thank you for those thoughts. Yeah. Allison, would you like to introduce?
Sure, just really quickly, so Frankie and Noah are here, do you wanna introduce yourselves really quickly?
Hi, good afternoon. Many of you we've met in the past. My name is Frankie Jackson. And it's been a pleasure to work with not only Allison, but other members to help bring this vision forward and help us be more visible in everything we do through Met Council. So thank you for allowing us that time and space. Everything he said. Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for Prairie Island Indian Community. It's good to see you guys again.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all the work you've done, and also appreciate you're here today. Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could remain silent because so much has been said already, but I just needed to share my appreciation for the work that's come forward and also for this discussion, which is exactly the discussion that we should be having. You know, while we know that the acknowledgement, the recognition, and even the atonement and commitments that are a part of this statement are very specific, you know, due to the political status of American Indians in this country. We also know that there are documents that, much like this statement, and even more so, have embodied the disenfranchisement of American Indians in this country. They have been repeated and recited over time, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear back from the committee that there is an importance here to having some kind of statement. I also acknowledge the many, many communities and groups that have been disenfranchised. We can recite them, and we know that respecting through this action, incorporating this into our documents and into our processes does not keep us from respecting or acknowledging or uplifting very intentionally other disenfranchised groups. So while I want to hear back from the committee, the discussions that you have about the potential ways in which we can incorporate this, and I just want to stand here to appreciate the work that's been done and to also emphasize the importance of the commitments so that we're not talking about an empty statement, of the commitments, but also of the statement that reflects those commitments and on a regular basis so that as we practice and rehearse that statement, those commitments become a part of our lives, a part of our processes, a part of all of our documents, and help us to practice the acknowledgement of other disenfranchised groups, you know, as we should. You know, we should leave no one out. And that becomes more and more a part of our lives as council members. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, Allison, thank you so much for the presentation, and give our best wishes to those that couldn't be here, and thanks to those
Mr. Chair, I just
that
heard from Robert Pilot, his car is totaled, so we
Oh my
appreciate
God.
it.
Wow.
What?
He's okay.
Well, at least I think it's yet to be seen.
Oh my gosh.
He's sore.
You okay?
Oh my gosh.
But if it's bad, I'll show you the picture.
Oh dear. Right, well, there's a lot of sacrifice to get to these things. I know when I have more conversations about this issue, I'm glad we started it here. Two things. One is, I won't repeat what's already been said. I thought there's some lovely work in you. I appreciate that. I have to say, in my own experience working with organizations that have land acknowledgements, it is less awkward the more frequently it's used, and it does kind of get into a practice that allows us to reflect. That's always a good thing. Before we get to our next important subject, do you want to talk about next steps?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll just add, on the part of, today we're talking land acknowledgement specifically, that was the focus, but on the part of what are the other commitments that were listed throughout the document. So there's been an ongoing series of meetings with Allison and others from the team, and we're working right now on making sure that they move through the correct processes and procedures that exist within the council structure. And part of that's a bit of a where we think it goes, and then continuing to have conversations through the advisory committee to make sure they feel comfortable about those directional pieces too. Most things fit through the committee structures that exist here. And so one of the things you should expect to see as council members over the coming, I would say 3-6 months, as you're looking at work plans for next year, is ideas from staff about prioritization of what makes sense to move to the top of those lists, what are the things that feel like most doable and the things that feel more aspirational in the short term, and working with those staff then as committees to really calibrate those lists of forward movement as we go. And then there are a couple of broader questions that I need to schedule a meeting with the chair. This is good, we're just doing this in real time.
Okay.
To talk on some of the parts of how we want to structure some of the broader organizational governance structural questions that were raised as well, so we follow back up. I just wanted to bring assurances that that conversation has continued and we're on a regular cadence. And through your committees that you serve on, you're gonna continue to see that as we go. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so our next really important subject area about engaging with people experiencing homelessness, I have to admire everybody who's joined us. I had the great honor of sitting at the governor's interagency task force on ending homelessness. And there's, just have to say, really exciting things happening across the state and the metro area. And yesterday, I actually attended the press conference where there was acknowledgement, certainly got a lot of press today about ending, although has anything ever ended, but veterans homelessness. And it's good that we celebrate milestones, but also acknowledge that this work always continues, and that Met Council is involved in so many different ways. So this is not just a transit issue, it's not just a community development issue. It's everything that we kind of, and I've certainly heard from many of you that we want to, what can we do more? And of course, most importantly is what are we doing? And we've learned from our consultants, but also our active practice. And so I want to introduce all of you, but Terry, maybe you can start us off, but great to see everybody here.
Yeah, I will do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. We're happy to be here today with a plethora of us to share some of the work that the council is doing around homelessness in the region. It's complicated, it's hard work. It's making a difference. I think to echo what Chair Zelli said about ending veteran homelessness, yesterday the announcement was made. It took Hennepin County 8 months to get the clearance from the feds to make that announcement. And so ending veteran homelessness in our largest county in Minnesota is a huge accomplishment, and it doesn't happen without lots of work, lots of intentionality, lots of people coming together to do the hard work. And I feel like my message with that is if we can do it with veterans, we can do it with other people experiencing homelessness. And so there are some startling statistics in our presentation today, but don't want to discourage us from doing the hard work that will get us to where we need to be. And so we're happy to be here today. We're splitting up the slides. I have the boring part to kind of set the stage and tell about sort of the council's role, primary role in working with people experiencing homelessness. We have Ryan Ottenheim, Life Fight here. I'm excited to announce that Ryan's our newest manager in the Metro HRA.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, we're
Wonderful.
excited. Ryan's been with the council for 8 years, but has a lot of experience in outreach and engagement with people experiencing homelessness, and now plays the role as manager of outreach and special initiatives. So she'll share with us the work that the Housing Authority is doing around homelessness. We're here with our one and only Sergeant Beverly Rodriguez from the Homeless Action Team. She leads up that team and can share what's happening on the transit system related to homelessness. And then we have our two brilliant consultants here with us, Dee on the end, and then Rico, who are consultants with lived experience that are helping us frame policies and develop actions around bringing end to homelessness, not only here in our region and our state. And so we'll all play a little piece in this, and I'm gonna start with some background. The council's role in addressing homelessness primarily falls into two buckets, although we touch lots of areas in our work, but primarily through the work of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority, through Metro HRA, through the provision of rent assistance programs. So we serve about 7,200 households, low-income households with rent assistance in the region. And we have some specific programs that serve people experiencing homelessness, and Ryan's gonna talk about the details of that and where we've been the last couple of years with that. We provide some housing search assistance to families with high barriers. In many cases, those are people experiencing homelessness. We provide connections to services and resources every single day, and many of those people are experiencing homelessness. And we collaborate with the Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness, as well as the continuums of care around the region, and I'll talk about what that means. The Metro Transit Homeless Action Team works every single day with people experiencing homelessness through regular outreach on the transit system. That's ongoing touch points, and Sergeant Rodriguez will get into the details of that, but connections to services, housing, and resources. I mean, that's like what we do. Connections is what makes successful achievements in housing stability. The Metro Transit has contracts with organizations to provide case management services. They provide immediate needed resources. In the winter, they'll be providing socks and hats. They provide snacks, water, clothing, immediate needs for people that are sheltering on the transit system. And then also collaborate with the Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness. Just fast facts for the Metro HRA. The map at the right is the map of the Metro HRA Service Area. Community Development Committee members see this map on almost every presentation, but you'll notice that it doesn't mirror the council's operating area. So with the Housing Authority working the vouchers, we're serving all of Carver County, all of Anoka County, and then suburban Hennepin and Ramsey. We're the largest administrator of tenant-based rent assistance in the state of Minnesota. With 7,200 vouchers, we operate 9 different programs, some of those specifically targeted to people experiencing homelessness. And then we distribute about $80 million in subsidy payments to 1,400 private landlords each year. So I'm going to talk about 2 different buckets of our work. One is with continuum of care collaborations around the region, and the continuum of care is a requirement of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for any region that wants to apply for federal dollars to address homelessness in their region. There are 10 continuum of care regions here in our state, but it's really developed to design and promote a community-wide effort to bring an end to homelessness, providing shelter, services, permanent and transitional housing to regions around the country. So funding, they issue an annual NOFO for funding that's distributed to nonprofit providers, service providers, tribally designated entities, and local governments for housing and services.
A NOFO is a notice of funding opportunity.
Thank you, Rico. I use so many acronyms, it's hard to remember to not use them. I appreciate that.
It's government, right?
Yes, right? I also want to ask, Mr. Chair, that we save all questions till the end, because
Sure.
there will likely be questions that come up in your minds that we'll address throughout the presentation, and because we have so many slides to get to, if I can ask
Let's do
that we
that.
save questions, that would be great. As I indicated, there are 10 continuums of care in our state, and there are 3 here in the metropolitan area. Council team members are active members of those continuums of care in the region. We serve on governing boards for both the Hennepin County and the Ramsey County COCs, and then we're active participants in the suburban metro area COC. And we call it SMAC. SMAC serves Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Washington, and Scott counties. So they're the smaller counties of the region that collaborate together as one COC. The dollar amounts shown here are the amounts that were awarded from federal dollars to these COCs in the region last year to address homelessness in our state for shelter operations, for transitional housing, permanent housing, and supportive services for people experiencing homelessness. What we do know is those dollars aren't enough. And what I'm excited about with the COC arrangements is that this will be the first time the COCs are collaborating with the state for a statewide ask for state funding to address homelessness across the state. And that will be for, all of them are facing fiscal cliffs and funding for funding that was received during COVID for expansion of shelter beds, for example. So the ask will be for expanded shelter beds, maintaining current operations, dedicated funding to nonprofits that serve people experiencing homelessness, and even a sort of a peer-to-peer program where metro area providers could train outstate providers in working and engaging with people experiencing homelessness. So the council is not a direct recipient of any of these funds, but we collaborate, we help in the scoring process, and we're certainly an indirect beneficiary of all of these support services that are helping people achieve housing stability is the purpose of these groups. This slide shows the point in time count. So there's a single point in time count on January of every year. It's required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, so HUD, for every COC region across the country. And it's literally a count of people experiencing sheltered and unsheltered homelessness on a given night. You'll see that the point in time count, these are preliminary results that we received. It hasn't been widely published yet, but the count for 2024 was over 9,000 people experiencing homelessness on a given night in January. I think the other part of the slide here is that there's an increase in the people that are unsheltered, which is that bottom graph. And unsheltered means literally sleeping outside or another place not meant for human habitation. And so I think the numbers can be deceiving. They're complex. These numbers mean a lot when you dig into them. And it certainly doesn't show the progress that's being made. I think what we can say is that there's a systemic need for affordable housing for low-income families in our region, and these numbers show that. I think people experiencing homelessness are dealing with a lot of issues. It might be systemic racism, certainly complex health issues, and all of those things exacerbate the homelessness in our region. And so I think if there's a light in all this, I think there's more collaboration happening around homelessness in our region than ever before, and statewide efforts to bring services and housing to our most vulnerable neighbors and community members. Another thing that I'd like to point out, American Indian communities are 32 times more likely to experience homelessness than white people in our region. They're 13 times more likely to experience homelessness than the overall homeless population. So showing the disproportionate impact of our American Indian neighbors and friends, and so that's certainly at the forefront of this work. Shifting gears to our work with the Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness. This is a cabinet level body that includes our very own Chair Zelli, along with the commissioners of all state agencies. And this group is really accountable for leading the state's efforts to move towards housing, health, and racial justice for people experiencing homelessness. There's a link here to Crossroads to Justice. I encourage you to look at that document. I encourage you to read it. It's a very comprehensive document that has specific actions towards. The link doesn't work? Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Chair and council members, I'll send the link out.
Yeah, we'll get that out.
Yeah, we'll get that out. If you Google Minnesota Crossroads to Justice, it'll come up. But I will send the link out, so I'm not sure why that's not working. I apologize for that. But there's very complex actions that every state agency has adopted in this plan. We're working with our friends Rico and Dee on implementation of this plan, and they're gonna share with you some of the work that they've done and some thoughts with you in a few slides. But the Met Council team, both the Housing Authority, people from our Livable Communities group, as well as Sergeant Rodriguez participates in the MITCH team. We call it MITCH, Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness, in the MITCH work. And the Crossroads to Justice plan contains 5 overall results with several actions under each component. And every MITCH agency, including the Met Council, has committed to actions under each of those results. And again, we're working with 3 consultants with lived experience, 2 of which are here today. We're also working with Sarah, who's not able to join us, but we had a different group of consultants that helped us with designing the plan in the last year, and now we're working with Rico, Indy, and Sarah on implementing the plan. So developing actionable policies and changing the way we do our work to make a difference. I'm not gonna read all of these to you, but there are 5 results in the Justice Plan, and the Met Council has actions under each of those results. They're either actions with the Homeless Action Team with Metro Transit, actions that the Housing Authority can take, or there are some actions with our livable community and grant programs. So how can we do things differently? How can we adopt different policies to make a difference in our region? And what playground do we have to create space to make, to take action to reduce the amount of homelessness in our region? And so I encourage you to look at that. We will be coming back at some point to take a deeper dive into this. We don't have time today, but to dig into each of these results and the actions associated and talk to you about what that looks like. And we can bring Dee and Rico and possibly Sarah with us to that conversation as well. But I'm gonna turn the table over to Dee. Dee is one of our consultants that we've been working with for the last several months. We've been meeting every other week and talking specifically about Met Council actions. And so we're excited to be working with them. We've made some great progress, but Dee is a first-generation American Latina artist, advocate, and elder with disabilities. She is a change management consultant and business owner who thrives on using her skills for racial, housing, and health justice. Dee celebrates her lived experience, and she is sure the best is yet to come. So Dee, I'll turn it over to you. Dee has a couple of slides here.
Okay, thank you so much, and I'm just honored to be here. This is really exciting for me. I just want to talk to you a little bit about about lived experience, what it is, how it helps organizations. I kind of like to say you don't know what you don't know. And you just don't know what you don't know. And that's where we help. Now, a few data points about, I should project more. There we go. A few data points. One of the things I love, when you go to law school, they really pound into you for like year after year about how 30% of lawyers have alcohol or drug abuse problems. Because they want to get ahead of the game, you know what I mean? Well, for the Wilder study of these last few years, either 23 or 27% of people who experience homelessness have substance abuse problems. You are actually more likely to have a substance abuse problem if you're a lawyer than if you live on the streets. So people kind of have these preconceived ideas about what the face of homelessness is, and it's really not what you think. I first became homeless running away from domestic abuse as a child. So domestic abuse comes in there. I became homeless 4 times as an adult because of my allergy-induced asthma and allergies to mold, and had to abandon my housing and take my landlords to court, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different reasons: disability, mental health, domestic violence. There's just all these different reasons that people experience homelessness, and it's just really not. The media really loves to play up the whole, substance abuse, and it's like, well, talk to your lawyer, and then we'll talk. So the kinds of things that people with lived experience help with are really helping people to understand what would really be useful. In terms of, because people who haven't been homeless really just don't have the right idea about what would be useful. They're just doing it from their experience and not having that experience. So we, Rico and I and other people participate in a lot of things like strategic planning, evaluating current practices, which I really love, hiring insights. I get at least a letter or 2 a month about, we never would have hired that person if it wasn't for you really championing them. And we now know 3 months later that was the right choice. But it's sort of like you don't know what you don't know, like you want to hire people that know a lot about the county, but they don't necessarily can't help you solve homelessness. And I think people that work in this field have to really believe, I know Rico and I have talked about this, we have to believe that we can't end it. And it is solvable. Not that it's gonna get better, like veterans homelessness, it's gonna end. it's solvable. And I think that that's really important. I think that's a perspective that a lot of people with lived experience bring to the table. We do RFP evaluations. I've been to community meetings for the city of Minneapolis, kind of development meetings. And so the idea is to increase community awareness about the real face of homelessness, not the, I love the guy who ran for city council in Minneapolis, and his, platform was that anyone who was homeless and didn't go into sober housing would be jailed. Well, why would they go to sober housing if only 23% of them have substance abuse problems? But these ideas that people have about who we are. And then I like to believe I add depth and breadth to people's perceptions of homelessness and people who experience homelessness, so they don't see this as kind of like a one-stop deal. So that's my you don't know what you don't know kind of thing, and I really value the experience that we bring. The thing that Rico and I do, there were 14 of us chosen, and I think it was a brilliant choose because of our variety of experiences. There were 446 people that applied. So there's a lot of people out there that really care about homelessness and care about solving the homeless problem. And part of my mission in this life is to activate us all. Not have just 14 of us that are working with Mitch, but have everybody activated to solve this problem. I think the things that people that have lived experience bring are authenticity. Been there, done that. It's not theoretical, it's real. We bring diversity. There's a broad range of people. There are people with PhDs and there's people who did, you know what I mean? It's just everybody. It isn't just this one kind of little niche that people have. We have a shared experience, so we kind of can share our experience, and we have a breadth of experience. In terms of, people that have had addiction issues, people that have lived outside, people that have, been to court a lot. It's just a very broad experience. People who are veterans, the veterans courts, things like that. There's a broad breadth of experiences. And we just really do have knowledge that other people don't have. It's just that simple. We have knowledge that other people don't have. And that's why I always say we're better together. Because, it's like, it takes all of us to solve the problem. It takes the guy that goes down to the legislature and gets the money. It takes the person that goes and gets the person off the street. It takes everybody to kind of solve the problem. And so that's how I think of us all being better together.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Dee. And next we have Rico. Rico's a consultant that we've been working with as well. And Rico is a lifelong Minnesota resident. He's an Indigenous person. He's struggled with housing stability for most of his life. He has some great stories, but he's also one of the leading voices for change in housing support programs, not just for the county, but for the region and the United States of America. Rico just attended the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness conference in D.C. and did some speaking there. So Rico, take it away, whatever you want to share.
Thank you. Buenas tardes, mi gente. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rico Morales. I am Indigenous and Mexican and American all at once, all at the same time. And I bring a lived experience perspective that is quite unique. I was on probation for 30 years. I was born into generational poverty, generational homelessness. The first time I had my own bed was when I turned 18 in 1991. I did a year in jail, and that was my first bed. And that type of childhood trauma changes you as a person. It's hormonal. It changes your chromosomes, and the lifelong effects and the consequences of your childhood and bringing up and raising into the adult world is a really long and belabored process. And so with my lived experience that I'm able to share with people is the homelessness, the drug addiction, alcohol and other drugs, and the recovery, the restoration. I've been sober for more than 13 and a half years. I've been fully housed, thank you. I've been fully housed since 2012 through permanent supportive housing. And I've been consulting with the Hennepin County and City of Minneapolis and nationwide at the National Alliance to End Homelessness conferences. So my voice or my perspectives or my experiences have been valuable to groups and organizations to ask what's really going on out there, what's the feeling on the ground, what's the feedback that we're doing right, that we're doing wrong, that we're not doing enough of. And I've been joining the Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness since it started this previous implementation consultant. And with Metropolitan Council, Metro Transit, the HAT team, I've been going out with street outreach a few times and engaging with them even at other events, the Phillips events for the Urban Farm, Not Toxic Harm, Roof Depot events, and just engaging with people is the answer. People are not the problem. Homelessness is the problem. People are the solution. And when you keep seeing people as homeless, you're not gonna see them as your neighbors. You're not gonna see them as your brothers and sisters living outside. And that's what we need to do. We need to rehumanize the services that we're doing, the programming and the resources that we have. And when you add someone like myself or Dee or other people to the conversation, we change the whole ecosystem of the reality of the experiences. We are poking the bear and identifying and confronting white supremacy, and because white supremacy is the #1 reason and cause of homelessness in this country. Now, we're barely moving the needle more and more, and we're confronting and identifying and adding more to the successes. From my experiences with the Homeless Action Team and Metropolitan Council within Mitch, I've seen there's a lot of need. There's a lot of need still for more staffing, more training, better reporting, more funding for the HAT team. And I know I'm sitting here with half the HAT team, but I've experienced myself, I've been a Metro Transit rider since 1992 when I first moved into Minneapolis. And I've loved Metro Transit, Metropolitan Council. I've loved almost everything that has ever come from Metropolitan Council. So when I was offered the opportunity to work as an implementation consultant, I grabbed Met Council, I grabbed Department of Corrections, I grabbed Minnesota Department of Health, because I'm checking off all the boxes on your list. And I believe engaging with people with lived experience like myself and Dee and other people, it shouldn't just be a 10-month, 12-month assignment appointment. We should be baking that into our systems, our opportunities and resources. We need to add more to that, what works well and what's going good. We need to keep doing that, and whether that's more funding or requests from the legislature. I've been in Washington, D.C. several times. I've requested funding from the legislature. I'm not trying to sell myself. I'm trying to sell others, everybody else, the experiences, the opportunities. If I'm not the right fit, if I'm not helping, or I want to help others find, here, meet so-and-so and meet so-and-so. This person over here, Department of Corrections, Bring It Home Initiative, and all this other, connectivity needs to happen. We need to think differently and we need to do differently, because nothing changes when nothing changes. And I know we've been changing a lot here in the Metropolitan Council. I know things are moving the needles, but I just want to keep going and keep this relationship going. And this is my first time here, and I'm just honored and respected by you letting me come here and speak and inviting us. And I just you know what, I'm gonna come back next time. I'm gonna tell them this and I'm gonna tell them that. So get familiar with my face and my name, and let me help you. Let me help, let's do a little thing together, and little things lead to big things. So thank you.
And Rico was just at outreach with us and came all dressed up for the meeting for you guys.
I've known him for years, and I've never seen him in a coat.
Yeah.
You gotta get a picture.
You better get a picture.
So he likes his picture, so if you can all stay for a picture with our consultants.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So thank you, Rico, appreciate your comments. One of the comments that stuck with me when we first started working with Rico is, he said, on paper, I'm unhousable. And that's a shame for anybody to have to think that. I'm unhousable. I have felonies, I have drug convictions, I'm unhousable. And that shouldn't be true for anybody. So thank you for level setting us. And then we have another consultant named Sarah who couldn't be here today, so she sends her best and hopes that she can join us next time. But she's been equally valuable to our work and has been attending meetings with us. So thank you to Sarah if you're listening online. And now I'm gonna hand it over to Ryan, who's gonna talk about some of the HRA work.
Yes, Mr. Chair, council members, thank you for having us here today. I'm gonna give you a little bit of overview just about the work ending homelessness that's been happening inside of Metro HRA. A little bit of level setting. This partnership between Metro HRA and the Metro Transit Police Department really started in the summer of 2018 when Metro Transit and the Homeless Action Team joined together to serve transit riders experiencing homelessness throughout our region. By September of 2018, the Metro Transit Police Department had established a team of officers that were certified as street outreach workers dedicated to working overnight shifts between shelter closing and the morning rush to connect people experiencing homelessness to services and shelter. 2 months later, in November of 2018, Metro HRA was awarded 89 mainstream vouchers that were dedicated to serve non-elderly, disabled households experiencing homelessness and utilizing our public transit system as their primary means of shelter. Metro Transit Police Department and Metro HRA joined in a shared mission to provide this population access to housing and services, thus becoming the Homeless Action Team. These 89 vouchers being used by the Homeless Action Team added to Metro HRA's voucher options for persons experiencing homelessness, which already included 157 VASH vouchers. Those are vouchers available for veterans through the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program. Initially, Metro Transit HAT officers focused their work around Central Station and Union Depot at the end of the Green Line light rail stop in St. Paul to connect riders experiencing homelessness to shelter. To further support the work of the Homeless Action Team, Metro Transit Police Department initiated a contract with a St. Paul-based service provider and provided funding to Metro HRA to support case management, housing search assistance, and support for transit riders moving into housing. This foundation guided the Homeless Action Team's work through 2019 when an additional 67 mainstream vouchers were awarded to Metro HRA and into early 2020 when the pandemic halted overnight services. The Homeless Action Team's work shifted supporting outreach and connections to shelter, housing, and services for people in encampments, while Metro HRA established partnerships with Hennepin, Ramsey, and Anoka Carver continuums of care to utilize 218 emergency housing vouchers that were awarded in 2021. Work to utilize all 218 emergency housing vouchers and an additional 50 mainstream vouchers continued through 2022 and 2023 when emergency housing vouchers sunset and were no longer available for new issuance. Through the remainder of 23 and 2024, Metro Transit's Homeless Action Team and Metro HRA focused on housing stability initiatives aimed at keeping our special voucher populations in housing and stable, assisting the goal of making homelessness non-reoccurring. I'll tell you a little bit more about the work that goes into utilizing our special purpose vouchers and helping people experiencing homelessness secure housing. The recent point-in-time counts highlighted by Terry have shown an increase in homelessness in Minnesota, for which there's several compounding factors above and beyond the simple lack of affordable housing. While a housing choice voucher offers voucher holders the chance to afford housing, it does not by any means guarantee a voucher holder will be able to secure housing. Each of the points here represent challenges many voucher holders face while searching for housing. Symptoms of poverty without any additional compounding factors can prevent voucher holders from securing housing, but affect our special purpose voucher holders even more. Any stint of homelessness can pose challenges on a rental application, much like a gap in a resume. It'll raise questions for property managers and could on its own be a reason a rental application is denied. Folks experiencing homelessness are more likely to be of extremely low income, and that makes it incredibly difficult to pay for multiple application fees and damage deposits that can often be twice the rental amount. We know voucher holders who have experienced homelessness are more likely to have criminal records even when these are petty crimes or crimes of homelessness, as we might call them, like loitering, public urination, public intoxication, those charges can prevent someone from being approved for housing. We also know many of our voucher holders working with the Homeless Action Team and accessing special purpose vouchers come to us with complex mental, chemical, and physical health conditions. On top of all of this, our voucher holders struggle to simply navigate systems that are complex, sometimes discriminatory, and require folks to maintain documents, phones, and appointment schedules. We've mentioned here a challenge with acceptance of vouchers. There is no requirement that property owners accept vouchers out in the community, and we often find rental listings that will state boldly and clearly no vouchers accepted before we ever start talking about any of these other barriers that impact our voucher holders. Metro HRA staff have worked to mitigate many of these barriers and increase the likelihood that special purpose voucher holders will be able to utilize their voucher to exit homelessness. The work done mitigating these barriers and supporting special housing voucher populations and finding housing has proven successful. Every voucher holder served by Metro HRA is allowed at least 120 days to secure a unit. On average, our general housing choice voucher populations who do not receive any extra special assistance in mitigating their barriers and finding housing have about a 60% success rate in placing their voucher in the community, and they're able to do that in about 2 months. As shown here, it does take our emergency housing and mainstream voucher holders more time to secure housing, but they are significantly more likely to do so before their voucher expires. Additional funding made available to special purpose voucher holders is a significant factor contributing to the success of these programs. As discussed, people experiencing homelessness with extremely low incomes can struggle to pay application fees and deposits that are required to move into housing. Many of our voucher holders utilizing these funds have income of about $203 a month through state general assistance payments. In those cases, coming up with a $50 application fee or a $1,000 deposit to move in is just not possible. Some voucher holders need financial assistance to pay their first month's rent when moving into housing, while some also need a very basic level of housing items to assure that they're not sleeping on the floor, that they have a blanket, that they're showering with a shower curtain and a towel. These are all things that we are providing through funding available to our emergency housing voucher and mainstream voucher holders. You can see here that access to deposits is the largest source of funding utilized by the highest number of special purpose voucher holders. The numbers shown here in black represent the numbers of voucher holders that have benefited from each funding category since 2018, but does not reflect the total number of voucher holders who have used one of our special purpose vouchers. That's because Metro HRA staff really try to be intentional and good stewards of our resource and help our voucher holders navigate systems, funds, and other resources available to pay some of these needed fees to move into housing. Metro HRA serves a similar population with similar barriers and similar experiences in homelessness in partnership with the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs through the Veteran Affairs Supportive Housing Program, or VASH voucher. Like many of our other special voucher programs, Metro HRA provides rental subsidies for these VASH vouchers, but services and any additional funding needs are provided by the VA. Through this partnership, 202 veteran households containing 231 adults and 68 children are currently in housing each night. Through our emergency housing voucher and mainstream program, we have housed over 1,200 adults and children since 2019. Our mainstream vouchers have been available for longer and have served the majority of this population, most of whom, just about 75%, were referred to Metro HRA through the Homeless Action Team. Most of the 478 people housed with emergency housing vouchers were referred to Metro HRA by those continuums of care we discussed. That's how the emergency voucher program was established. Though a small percentage still received connection to emergency housing vouchers from the Homeless Action Team. Now that we've utilized all of our special vouchers and have over 1,200 people in housing each night, Metro HRA has shifted our focus to assuring housing stability. On the next slide, I'll go into a little bit more detail about the specific types of services we're providing voucher holders to help them remain stably housed. For now, the big takeaway here is that Metro HRA has been able to help about 67% of our mainstream vouchers maintain stable housing. And in the case of mainstream vouchers, Metro HRA can continue to reissue any vouchers that are turned over to help new voucher holders navigate barriers and move into housing. We're continuing to provide in-house services and referrals to outside services for mainstream voucher holders based on their needs. And for our emergency housing voucher holders, we have systems and stability initiatives in place since the sunset of these vouchers that has helped lead to a 99% stability rate, which translates to only 6 emergency housing vouchers losing their vouchers within 2024. Again, we continue to provide in-house services, referrals to outside services, and I really want to highlight an extremely beneficial partnership we have with Hennepin County's Housing Stabilization Services that provides direct access to social workers and personalized stability services for any emergency housing voucher holder living in Hennepin County. I'll finish my portion here today with an overview of Metro HRA's work around placing and sustaining special purpose vouchers for people experiencing homelessness by providing some detail about the types of stability interventions that our staff is providing. The majority of our voucher holders who receive assistance to maintain their housing need help simply navigating systems. This most often means helping voucher holders complete their annual recertifications, by collecting verifications of their income, scheduling inspections that work for their family and work schedules, and helping people just read and comprehend the forms they need to be part of this massive federal program. Less often, our voucher holders need help with coaching and support around adherence to their lease obligations. This most often means that staff are intervening in situations that could lead to lease terminations or evictions. This could be a neighbor dispute or failure to pay rent or utilities. These 2 areas constitute the majority of assistance needed by our voucher holders and are areas where officers from the Homeless Action Team assist. It's not uncommon that we have people previously experiencing homeless who have moved into housing that are struggling with unauthorized guests kind of overstaying their welcome in this new person's unit. This causes issues for the voucher holder, for their neighbors, and the property owner. In these cases, HAT officers have assisted HRA staff in visiting units, reconnecting with voucher holders that they may have referred to the program initially, and offering services and a nice suggestion to move on to any unauthorized guests that are staying in our voucher holders' units. There's some cases that our staff at Metro HRA can't resolve and require referrals to outside services, and even fewer cases that require our staff to help a voucher holder move out of their unit and prepare to move into a new unit with their voucher. I'll transition here to Sergeant Rodriguez, who will give you more details about the police department's work.
Chair, council members, most of you might remember me from 1.5 years ago when I presented here. Sergeant Bev Rodriguez and I oversee our homeless action team. But I'm happy to be here again to give an update on what the team is doing and where we are now. I'll come back to this photo actually. PAT, we're currently consist of 1 sergeant, which is myself, and 3 officers. We were established in 2018 to address the unsheltered population on the trains and buses, and we've housed over 500 individuals with the partnership with the HRA, and that's including adults and children. Our main focus currently is treatment right now, and the reason is because we don't have any vouchers. We're waiting on some new ones to come in next January, hopefully. And so we have been focusing on treatment with the increase of drug use and addiction on the trains. That actually has been helping out a lot. We go out and do outreach with RICO, with a few other outreach workers with lived experience. But as of the end of January to the end of September, we've gotten 39 people into treatment. And although that number doesn't seem very high, it's very high for us. And the reason is because nobody used to take us up on treatment before. And when we started right along with Andy from Mental Health Minnesota, with all these other folks with lived experience, that they kind of started taking us up on this a little more. I think the uniform usually scares them off, but then when we hand them off to like the social workers or someone from outreach, they kind of pick them up on that a little more. So 39 is a good number, we're very proud of that. And if you look at the chart on the right there, it actually gives a number of our calls for service, and this is specifically HAC calls for service, how they've dropped down through the implementation of TSIPs, or the Transit Service Intervention Project that came on last summer, 23, to the end of June 24. And it's kind of cool to see the amount of calls from June to September, how they drastically dropped down, and this is specifically calls for service for PAT. So there's still a few outreach organizations that are out there writing. Most of them have finished their funding, but there's still a few that are out there writing with us and that come out to do outreach with us as well. Oh, actually, this photo was taken this last summer, and this is a little pop-up event that we did. It was HAT along with a few TSIP organizations. We have People's Incorporated, we have Radius Health, and a few others, but this was at the Union Depot. We got a lot of people stopping by, picked us up on services, took some goodies. It was a great day. Street outreach focus. So this is what we do basically twice a week currently. We ride the bus, the blue lines, or the blue line and the green line, Wednesdays and Thursdays. We go out with outreach, we go out with social workers. Rico came out with us today. And we're just, we're trying to connect them to their benefits, to if they're in housing, where they're at with the status currently. Maybe it's shelter for the night, maybe it's government resources, whether that's an ID, social security card, something like that. But then treatment is our main focus. So we usually, whenever we see a crowd of folks that are hanging out somewhere, doing something they shouldn't be doing, we immediately say, hey, does anybody want to go to treatment? And a lot of times they have been picking us up on it, where they're really at their lowest point in life and they're like, you know what, I'm ready to go to treatment. And we get a van, we pick them up then and there. We don't tell them go to this address, we don't tell them take the train somewhere. We get a ride for them then and there, and we'll take them to treatment. And I think that's why this has been pretty successful for us lately. We also help with the social workers will help with case management and immediate needs, like whether if it's in the wintertime, it's gonna be hack gloves, coats, hand warmers. Sometimes right now it's water because of the summertime, snacks. But yeah, we're out there twice a week currently. We're gonna try to increase this as the months go on and it gets colder and people are getting kicked off the trains. We're gonna try to focus on getting some HAT focused details that are gonna be possibly 6 hours long, 4 to 6 hours long, so more to come on that. HAT-specific vouchers, and we'll follow up with those that do qualify for HAT-specific vouchers. Like I mentioned, there isn't any vouchers for us currently, but we do have a waiting list. So let's say we run into someone that is a potential candidate for like a voucher, and we'll put them on a list. We have a running list, so when we do get vouchers, we can get some in, if we can get in contact with them, because that is another struggle. We'll get them into a housing voucher as soon as we get some more. Transportation assistance will help with giving them a ride somewhere if they need to get to, maybe it's a parole officer, maybe it's a social worker, if they need to, whatever the case is, we'll assist with that as well. The photo on the right you'll see is our mobile assessment vehicle, also known as our MAV. We use this mainly, currently we're using it for MPD encampment cleanups. So MPD, when they're getting ready to clean up an encampment, they will call us first to assist, not with the cleanup specifically, but for services. So our HAT team will go out, we park the MAV just a little ways away from where the encampment's getting cleaned up, and they direct folks to the MAV and say, hey, if you need anything, go talk to HAT or the homeless action team, and they'll direct them to the MAV. This last cleanup that we had at Bessemer Apartments and along the Franklin corridor, we had a line of folks that were waiting along the MAV to just get some type, whether it was just immediate needs, whether it's just a snack or water, we were still trying to connect them to something. HAT trainings. So HAT does specific trainings for within our department or Metro Transit for our different units, like for instance, the MTPD Academy. So when officers get hired on, they have to go through an academy in the police department. We go in and talk to them about what HAT does, how they can help, what they can do for us on the street when we're not around. And then we also do trainings for Metro Transit bus operators. I'm actually doing one at the end of the month. It's a 3-day training. 3 different groups that are getting trained on what HAT does and what Patrol does. But we also go in, they're all tailored to these different individual groups. Another one is the trip agents. Every time trip agents get hired on, we go in and speak about HAT as well. And they're mainly getting taught on how to identify folks that are experiencing homelessness, or we give them these little booklets with resources on them. My intern Hannah, who's sitting over there, she actually created these tear-offs, and they have a ton of resources. She made these other like mini trifolds with a ton of other resources. We just printed a ton of them out for the winter time. So we give these out to the bus operators, to the trip agents, to the officers every time we go in and teach these classes. Another one is how to connect with HAT. Like let's say they find someone out on the system and needs immediate assistance, like they can't direct them somewhere. They had to come out, how to get a hold of us. We do give them our cell phone numbers. We give them a number to dispatch to get a hold of a HAT officer if needed. And then just showing compassion. We never know what these folks are going through, you know, and everyone comes, like Dee was speaking to this too, but we never know. Anybody can be homeless, and just showing a little compassion and trying to see how you can help. That's what usually, anytime I go out there, is like, what can I do for you? I don't know what I can do unless you tell me what I can do. So everyone's got different needs. This just gives a little bit on our encampments on Met Council property and how we address them. So the photo on the top is more of that's an encampment. So this one was along Hiawatha. The one in the bottom is a pop-up tent that we deal with more on a frequent basis. You'll see those along the bike trail south of Franklin. But anytime it's on Met Council property, we come in and address those. And we basically start off with making contact with the individual. If they're not in their tents or if they're not in the area, we will post a sign, but we will come back and try to make contact. We don't tear it down immediately or anything like that. We advise them, if we do make contact at the moment, we advise them that it is private property. We'll provide resources. Is there anything I can do for you? Do you want to go to a shelter tonight? We let them know that they cannot stay there, but we will give them a reasonable amount of time to clean up depending on how much stuff they have. Sometimes they've been setting up camp for a while, so it may take a while, and I'll give them a full day if they have to. But the point is that they can't stay there. And most of them have been more compliant lately. I think the majority of the individuals that are setting up tent know Metro Transit's policy for some reason, because as soon as they hear us say, okay, yeah, well, it's your property, all right, we'll move it along. So the majority do grab their stuff and move, and sometimes even last week we ran into 5 individuals that were setting up tent on our property, and they grabbed their stuff and left right away. So they don't fight us on it. They understand it is private property. We will post signs. We will come back and check on them if they have a lot more belongings. If they leave anything behind that they don't want, then we will call facilities to come clean it up. We do have a current working document. It's an encampment working document that we've been working on. Actually, Lisa Barajas has been helping with that as well. But we continue to add to that too. And I think right now we have a really good process as far as handling them. Like I mentioned, most folks already know what's going on, and they know who we are. A lot of folks know who HAT is already. They just, you don't have to say the homeless action team, you just say HAT, oh, yep, I know who HAT is. So they know what resources we provide. We're always on the trains. And then we'll follow up with those who qualify for vouchers. If we do encounter someone that qualifies for a voucher, we'll get their contact information and we'll follow up with them when we do get more. Ryan, or one of you guys covered the housing challenges, but some of our challenges for the police side when dealing with them on the street is mental health. We deal with a lot of folks out there with mental health that are homeless. Drug and alcohol addiction, sometimes it's a mixture of both. They're homeless, mental health, and they're using drugs or alcohol. So sometimes, you know, it can be a challenge trying to get something through to them, trying to provide some assistance. Sometimes they don't want us because of some of these challenges. Winter shelters, some of the winter shelters will get full in the wintertime, and we don't know where to take them. It can be freezing outside, and I don't know what to do, you know, it's a challenge that we're always facing every winter. Individuals with pets, you'll see a lot more individuals out there with pets that, you know, it's their companion, it's what helps them, you know, get through the day. They want to keep them with, they don't want to be separated, and some shelters don't allow pets. So that's another challenge. And then the lack of consistent communication. Some of these folks don't have cell phones. I have to ask for their email, and that's if they're even going to check their email. So most of the time I ask, where do you hang out? Where are you usually at? Are you in downtown? Are you at the library? Like, that's where, so through our outreach efforts is where we actually find folks. So today when we were out doing outreach, one of the Hennepin County social workers is like, oh, let's go down to Franklin. I might find my client. I've been looking for her. You know, that's how we find them. So we went down there. She wasn't successful. She didn't find her. But, you know, we do find a lot of them that way. Let's see here. Where are we? Some of our community partners. So Catholic Charities, Radius Health, Hennepin County, Homeless Access Team. Ryan just mentioned them as the stability team. They're awesome. Like Pam and Sarah, they're social workers. They come out with us every week. They never fail us. Like they're out there all the time, and they come out with their laptops, with their iPads. They look up benefits immediately, and I can't speak any higher of those two. Mental Health Minnesota, Andy's pictured on the right there. He's from Mental Health Minnesota. He's awesome. He's the one that's been getting everybody into the treatments and finding the rides, connecting them to the intake process and all that. So People's Incorporated is another one that we partnered with through TSIP, and she's been coming along with us as well. Rico is always out with us as well. And then all the other TSIP vendors and partners that we met through the TSIP program. You'll see Officer Complin on here, and then Andy from Mental Health Minnesota. And for the outreach events that we do twice a week, we'll move them around depending on where our needs are. So for instance, in the wintertime, we'll move them to the Mall of America because that's where they like to hang out and use the restroom. It's warm. That's the end of the line. So we will move some of those outreach efforts to the mall and talk to everyone that's hanging out there. Right now, we're currently at 46 LRT because of the amount of calls that we get out there. So we will move them around depending on where the needs are. This is, before I play this video, some of you may have seen it on our social media, but this is Josh. And Josh was one of our troubled riders. He used to fight with police. He had every warrant in the book. He was just a troublemaker on the train, and he completely 360 his life around. He's been sober for a year. I actually went to his sobriety celebration, 1-year celebration, a few weeks ago, and I went off duty with Officer Complin, and he didn't have anybody else there. We were the only two. And it meant so much to him. And I was wondering why he kept texting me if I was gonna go. And I go, yeah, I better go. You know, and it was my off day, but I still went. But I'm so glad I went because it made him so happy. I actually gave him one of my challenge coins, and I think he carries it everywhere with him now. But he works for Salvation Army now. He picks up trash on his own time. He's out there with us doing outreach. He's always talking to folks. People know him on the train from when he used to be a user and homeless, and they always come up to him and they say, Josh, what's up, man? How you been? And he goes, sober, and they all kind of, yeah. So he's trying, and he's like, yeah, you can change your life too, and he's always trying to get them to do, go through the path that he went through. So I'm gonna show this video just to give a little perspective for those that haven't seen it. Oh, no.
Greg, can you play this for us? Here he goes.
My name is Joshua Allen Watson. I'm 35 years of age. I'm just here to tell my story and the transformation that I went through. I kind of grew up in a little town in Kankakee, Illinois, and struggled all my life with addiction from like 6 years old to 33 years old.
Joshua was known to transit police for many, many years. Chronic drug addict, living on our trains. We'd find them sleeping on the platforms, a lot of officer involved fight.
Yep, and it was a struggle, man, for a long time because I was on this train constantly. I was out there like struggling, going from transit to transit. A lot of times the encounters that I had with Metro Transit, they were talking to me in a positive manner, encouraging me still. And it took that to be able, and a couple other things, holding me accountable. That was one of the main factors, just holding me accountable for not only my actions, but for who I am.
I told him on Friday, I said, we're gonna do outreach every Thursday at Union Depot, and he showed up, and I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, you told me to come for outreach. That's never happened before, so I was super excited.
The experience that I have and you getting sober and you coming out here with me, it will show these other people that they have hope, bro.
And I'm blessed. I got to succeed.
You got to. Ain't no other way. I was able to overcome the addiction by just having enough. 20 plus years of addiction is enough for any man to want to quit and want to be able to change. And it was hard, it's not been easy, but I know there's no growth without pain or struggle. Working at the Salvation Army, I graduated from the ARC. I bought a cleaning cart and I go around the neighborhood and I clean up. And I just come out here and try to be of service. I'm just really focusing on trying to give back and show other people that there's a transformation that can take place if we put in the work and the effort and we continue to stay sober and want recovery.
Man, I'm proud of you, bro.
One of the first steps you gotta do, you gotta get, bro, in treatment, bro. You gotta.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing today.
Okay, that's good.
And I'm so proud of you and all the work you've done. You're a testament to the change that can happen.
Because of individuals like Josh and Rico and Dee, like the hat has been a lot more successful and people picking us up on stuff, so thank you to the folks
I
with
just have
lived
to say that
experience.
I'm really excited I brought tears to my eyes, but tonight, after this thing, I'm going to a party to celebrate my 47 years of sobriety. A lot of gratitude.
And
No, I think that's it, so.
Well, I know we will have some questions or comments, but what a moving presentation. So thank you so much, each of you. And little I know about recovery and is the act of helping others is itself such a healing thing. And I think if we develop this cohort, this team, like Josh, to be out there with compassion, we were just whispering. Anybody who says this is not solvable is just crazy. It is totally solvable. Wonderful. Hi, Sue, then Deb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do this without crying. Dee and Rico, thank you both so much.
Telling your story just is amazing. I really appreciate it. I won't ask for statistics in a presentation tonight, but maybe sometime in the future we could learn more about the children who are being impacted by homelessness. Rico, you talked about how you were homeless as a child, and I know that 37 years ago, when the first federal legislation was passed in Washington, children were a big focus of that federal legislation. And that federal legislation wouldn't have happened without a bipartisan effort. We've still got the children needing homes. We really have a need for the bipartisanship. So hopefully after Election Day, we'll have an ability to really come together and address this issue in a really good way. The other thing I would love to see in a future presentation, and I wouldn't expect it from each of you, but Mr. Chair, maybe from you and folks from the Interagency Council, I'd like to know more about what we're doing statewide. Because when a homeless shelter in Duluth or Rochester closes down, many times those folks come here. And I remember when I was working at a church down town here a few years ago, a big part of the challenge that Catholic Charities was facing at that time was it wasn't all Twin Cities, 7-county metro folks. It was greater Minnesota, it was people from North Dakota and South Dakota and elsewhere. So I'd like to know more about that statewide effort. And I can't thank you all enough, and I hope that Dee and Rico, that you'll both stay in touch with us as a council, because your story is so powerful. And it really helps us as council members be able to talk about this issue when we're having conversations in the communities and townships and counties that we represent. So thank you.
Thank you so much. My response would just be to continue doing the good. You know, we're doing good, we need more of the good. We need to add that, increase it. I know it's funding, it's legislative, but really, we can't nonprofit our way out of this housing crisis. We're not gonna. It's never gonna happen. We need funding, we need more HAT officers and staff, and you know, it's just, I could see this happening on a more regular basis.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up. Your point, Rico, about we can't now profit our way out of this is just crucial. So that's the other thing. What are we doing with our congressional delegation, particularly our 4th District representative who serves on the Appropriations Committee in the House? What are we doing with our delegation to get help at the federal level as well as the state level? Because it's a nationwide issue. So thank you.
Thank you. And that's some of the work that I'm doing with Dee and with others through Mitch and through National Alliance to End Homelessness, is I go there to Washington, D.C., and I speak on behalf of federal funding, and through the HUD appropriations is getting more money for everyone.
And one of the things I realized I didn't share in my my talk is that when you said statistics, it reminded me of 87%, according to Wilder Foundation, 87% of people who are homeless in Minnesota have disabilities. So, you know, what I'm trying to do, like at the county level and the state level, is really press this home. Why are we not talking about this more if 87% of the people experience this? And so, you know, I come from a background in disability law, all these things, and that's the thing that I really kind of try to talk up a lot with people, is that we have to make that a bigger part of the picture.
Interesting. Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your stories, and thank you for sharing Josh's story. I think anytime that we have people and faces and names and stories as we're out talking with people, it helps us to help relay that message that these are things that are impacting real lives and real people. And I think that's really, really critical to all of it. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. A couple of things that you said, Sergeant, like, people know who HAT is. You don't have to explain it anymore. You don't have to talk about it. To me, that's a huge testament. When we did this project years ago of how can we do this, and you're really reaching people, which was evident by the video of Josh and your comments, that when it came to his sobriety challenge, you and Officer Copeland were his people. I mean, that to me just speaks volumes, not only for the program, but also for your character in the program itself. So to be just amazing. And also, the other thing I found impressive in those numbers was the TSIP program. So it was a program that was part of the 2023 Transportation Omnibus Bill. Obviously, having those community groups out there, part of the system, different people relating different ways, and sort of, again, that layered approach, whether to sort of the safety and security piece, because people who may be unsheltered need to feel safe and secure with who they're talking to, and that shows the impact of having those community organizations. I did text Leslie during the meeting and shared that one of the things for some of this work is built into the 2025 budget, even though the program ended, the legislative mandated program ended in the end of June, but it is a program, assuming the adopted budget will continue, because obviously it's a big impact. And
I think she's nodding.
Mr. Chair, and the one thing I would add to that too is as we've built up TRIP alongside TSIP, there's an interrelationship in terms of how we think about a comprehensive approach to both well-being and safety and security for everybody experiencing our system. And that's a part of this conversation, and that's absolutely a big part of the investment as laid out in the 2025 proposed budget.
Great, thank you. Gail?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to lift up what Councilmember Bento said and then talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington County. I think it would be interesting to know, we are a region, even though this is 3 counties, what the other counties are doing with the statistics on homelessness. Can we share what we've learned here to other counties? Can we layer this approach as well? I think that it would really be nice to have a picture of what's going on in the region. And so yesterday, they, at the county board, they approved the construction of a emergency shelter at the government center in Stillwater. Groundbreaking is November 12th. That's really exciting for them because they would have to take people to other counties. You know, that's part of how do we help these other counties so they can just service them. And these are 24-hour shelters with services for adults. So it's really exciting. And then, I mean, you know, you just want to understand that like City of Hugo has a homeless shelter and they don't have public transit. So people can't get to jobs. So different people are facing different issues around the region, and I think we need to shine a light a little bit as well about what's going on in the region. And how we do that, I don't know, but I think it would be good to fold that into part of this discussion. Lots of lessons learned, and how can we share and support the other counties who are in the HRA. And they're all doing great work, and they all have their CDAs and really working hard. But it's very exciting about the new shelter.
Yeah, it's great news.
Stillwater.
Thanks for that comment. Yeah, Robert?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I really want to thank everyone here, Terry and Ryan and your team, the HAT team, incredible work, and I get to see Sergeant Rodriguez quite a bit out in the community, which is great. I get to see Rico all the time, and in a very good way, probably multiple times a week, and so I can really affirm that he is connected in the community. You guys show thanks for doing this work on our behalf. More about Sergeant Rodriguez's presence in a moment, but I just want to point out that on the timeline that you shared with the development of the HAT team perfectly parallels the establishment of what we now call the Wall of Forgotten Natives. And it was an incredible occupation, and sort of the people weren't invisible anymore, right? It was right there on Highway 55, right on the light rail. Tens and tens of thousands of people went by it every day and had to acknowledge sort of our systemic failure and incredible increase in people sheltering on our trains, especially, but on transit, you know, caused this establishment of the HAT team. And we call them our relatives that are living outside, not, you know, unsheltered or anything like that. But to your point, Sergeant Rodriguez, from the start, the HAT team was embedded in the community, building relationships with people that were doing outreach, who our relatives living outside could relate to, right? And it was super successful in to the idea that people know HAT, and thank you for saying that, because it affirms what I've been telling people here. People understand what HAT is, at least in the communities that I'm in, and they appreciate it. Other groups say, well, why can't the city have a HAT, or why can't, you know, the county have a HAT? And so we really set up a very visible model. And to your comment, and I just want to lift up something with your, you know, that people know Metro Transit, and that that when the city is clearing camps, because often they're in the lead, and those can get really rough and tough, and there's often protests, and then they can turn violent. So when Sergeant Rodriguez says people learn that it's HAT and they just, that's Met Council or Met Transit property, and they just leave, that has a lot underpinning that. It means they're not protesting us, they're not turning violent, and so, you know, yay hat. And then I think I'll just close with, so I don't know how many people, I'm on the executive committee of Heading Home Hennepin, which is the county's efforts to end homelessness. So I get a lot of data. So it's good to see, this data, but, and spend a lot of time in sort of those policy kinds of conversations around this. And I love lifting up this idea that this is solvable, right? This is something that we can do, and we've seen it with veterans homelessness. And so as we've seen on the horizon and that getting closer, this ending veterans homelessness, not just in Hennepin County, but pretty much statewide. And I just wanna point out that that is because of an alignment of resources and policy from the federal level down to the most local level with a very particular population that has kind of built into their benefits or their service benefits, these wraparound services that are resource intensive but effective. And right now still in our region, and we're struggling for that alignment and this idea that Mitch and seeking state resources and sort of state direction, working through the continuums of care, and then hopefully at the federal level, getting that direction and the adequate resources to really wrap services around our relatives who are living without shelter, I think is critical. And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people here and with the chair and with the regional administrator. And I bring up the point that the state can make us do things we don't want to do, right? So they can make us all sit together. They can make us leverage our resources across the region. And I have nothing really to back this up, but I say it in public all the time, so I'll say it here. I suspect that if we better aligned the resources across jurisdictions that we're already putting to try to solve these problems, we would see progress. So it's kind of like with the implement of the non-officer agents that it's saving us money, right? We're investing in a program that's actually saving us money. And so it'd be lovely to see more of that alignment, and starting at the state I think is a good thing, having federal direction and alignment. And the few times in my public policy career that I've seen that direct alignment of federal, state, and local resources on anything, you see progress, right? And so hopefully we'll get there sooner, but thanks again.
Judy?
Thank you, I just appreciate everything that you've shared with us tonight. It's just always good to be reminded of things that we've heard and we know, or in some other hat we wear, but it's just good to always stay grounded in it so that it's top of mind. We have a lot of challenges and opportunities in this region, and this helps us keep prioritized what we need to prioritize at Met Council. So I just have a couple of questions. I do love data, so like even Robert, if you have just some, 1 or 2 pages on high level data in Hennepin County for those of us who are Hennepin County districts, I would just love to have some of that. And then I always like disaggregated data, and we talked a little bit about that tonight. But again, I used to run Prosperity's Front Door, so it was a nonprofit project for 18 months that really went beyond the Dayton administration's task force on housing and homelessness to actually put together a dashboard on that. So we did that for 2 years. COVID hit, and it just like everything else, sidelined a lot of the work we were going to do. But again, I'm hoping the interagency on homelessness has a dashboard or some, just so that we can at least for policymakers, and just as we try to get this out into the everyday life of people out there to better understand what's going on with the person on the curb that is asking for money or wandering in the street, definitely looking like they're just completely lost. I mean, I just think that everyday people are already struggling. I feel like people are on the edge right now of falling into some of this with the economy the way it is, and with wages not keeping up with the cost of living and food and insurance and transportation and all that. So there's some high level stuff too, because I love the work we're doing at ground level, and it's amazing. And I'm always looking at the pipeline, how do we keep people from finding themselves in this situation. And I know there's efforts like homework starts at home, and making sure children have housing, because we also have realized that there are kids going to school and they're sleeping in cars at night with their family, and that's just unheard of in America, unheard of. So for me, I like to see data and trends in a reasonable amount, because there's tons of it out there, but things that impact the decisions we make would be super helpful. And as we are now in another chapter at Met Council of expanding our transit system, which is very exciting. We've got Green Line coming on, and we'll potentially have Blue Line extension coming on, and then all these BRT. So how can we continue to support HAT as the geography of our assets expand? And I know you've got that all programmed into the numbers, I'm sure, but it's just something that I just want to make sure that we aren't just keeping pace with it, but we're getting ahead of it so that you're ready to go and bringing people on so that it's not a day one. And then also those new, it's police departments primarily that are doing the police work, but working with new suburban police departments that are also seeing some of this in their communities for sure. It's not just in the urban core, we've got it in the burbs too, but aligning, and I know we have partnerships with many of them, but just aligning so that they understand, what the goal of this program is, and I know they've got social workers now embedded with them, but I just want to see a smooth transition so that all of our clients, whether they have a home or not on our system, can be cared for and being given the resources they need to have in the next, couple to, well, I guess ongoing. We're not going to stop creating transit in this region, so.
Yeah,
That's something I'd like to respond to real quick is yes, we are doing much better now. It's continuing that good and maintaining the programming and the resources. We're building new structures and new stations and new BRTs and other stations on Lake Street in Chicago and Franklin, but then we're having to shut them down and close them off. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars on Franklin Boulevard, and now we're spending thousands more to shut it all off and reconverting or dreaming a new dream about turning those closed Midtown Global Market transit stations into a satellite office or a satellite drop-in station for overnight resources. People don't want to come to a Hennepin County building or a Metropolitan Council building. We're going to have to go out and get them where they are, and that's building the structure that we've already done and repurposing it. So that's one possibility. Go ahead, Dee.
I was just gonna call people's attention that Hennepin County has changed their strategy dramatically in the past 7 years of how to deal with chronic homelessness, and they've reduced it amazingly. I mean, they just made a documentary, Rico and I were a part of it, they made a documentary about the success of Hennepin County's strategy change in reducing chronic homelessness, and that is people who have been homeless for more than a year. So living outside or in a shelter for more than a year. And one of the things they really feature in there is that they used to think that getting people housing was the end of the story. Okay, we did our job. And now they're realizing that those people just become unhoused again because the disability, whatever they were dealing with was not addressed. And so now their strategy is much more that housing is the beginning.
Yes.
And then the strategy continues. But the documentary, it just dropped about 2 weeks ago. It's The Invisible People. It's on YouTube. So people want to see that. It's about 45 minutes long. It talks about Hennepin County and how they've changed things to, I think they reduced chronic homelessness. It was like over 4,000 and now it's right around 2. So in the last 6 years they've reduced. And we're in every other city in America, chronic homelessness is going up.
That's good to hear. And Mr. Chair, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, but as I was listening to your stories, so my story includes my father who was an addict and depressed his whole life. So my mother and my grandmother ended up taking care of him, and then our family blew up and divorce happened. And yet then as I grew up and became an adult, I became his quasi-family social worker, trying to figure out where I was going to get him housed, and when he had quadruple bypass, where is he going to stay for care? And the only reason he really got sober was he finally ended up in a nursing home where he had no choice. And so, I just understand, I was so focused on him, but when you get a little breathing room, you realize the impact that it's had on your own life and how fragile my early 20s were just because of all of the things that I had experienced. So I just really take to heart what you're saying, and it is that whole life experience because we go through various phases, and at any given point we can become disabled or become ill or have a tragic situation where we hit depression or we, you know, it just happens to people. So the stereotype too, we have to really, to your point, we have to, I think, really break what that stereotype is because it can be anybody along the life continuum that goes through this.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're a little past time. I really want to thank everybody for that, but mostly thank you all. It was very inspiring.
Let's get a picture of all of us that are here.
Yes.
You can do it quick.
Yeah. So we gotta head out.
No, it's not a man. I'll take them.
Really?
You would have not many people.
That I'm aware of. You gonna go right here?
Where do you wanna go, Charlie?